It's this beautiful edge design featuring snowflakes that hang off of the bottom of your work. On this video, I'll teach you how to do the snowflake edge. I'll be using a 4mm hook and some cotton yarn size 4. Alright, so for this design, we're going to start with a foundation chain that's a multiple of 3. In my case, I have 12 chains. I've got 12 chains in my foundation chain. And we're going to move on to row 1. For row 1, you're going to skip 2 chains, which counts as a half double crochet. And then into the next chain, you're going to do a half double crochet. And into each chain of the foundation chain, we're just going to work half double crochets. So go into each chain with a half double crochet, and I'll see you at the end of the row. Okay, this here is the end of row 1. I've done 1 half double crochet into each chain. Let's move on to row 2. For row 2, we're going to chain 2, which counts as a half double crochet, and flip your work. You're gonna start the row repeat. The repeat starts by doing 1 half double crochet into the next stitch. In this case, you're going to skip the first one because this chain 2 counts as the stitch that goes above it. So you're going to go into the second stitch with a half double crochet. Continuing the repeat, we're going to work a picot stitch. For a picot stitch, you're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now we're going to do a slip stitch to the 4th chain from the hook, or the first chain that you made. Into that first chain, insert your hook and do a slip stitch. Now, continuing the repeat, we are going to be chaining 8. Let me just re-grab my work here. Chain 8. And now we're going to do a slip stitch to the first chain that you made. So into that very first chain, insert your hook and do a slip stitch. Now we are going to chain 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And you're going to do a slip stitch to the first chain that you made. So to the first chain, a slip stitch. And this is creating that first bit of the snowflake here. Now we are going to be chaining 14. So let's see here. 1, 2, 3. That's 10 and 4 more. That's chain 14. And now we're going to do a slip stitch to the first chain that you made. Okay. Now we're going to create 3 picots. So remember, for the picot, you just want to chain 4. And then do a slip stitch to the first chain that you made. And do that twice more. Chain 4. Slip stitch. Then chain 4. Slip stitch. We have the right side of the snowflake here. Now we're going to chain 4. And moving on, we're going to be working in the back side of the stitches of the right side of the snowflake. So I'm going to lay it flat for you. We've got the right side, and now we're going to come back down this side, along the side of the snowflake. So right now we're going to do 3 picots. So for a picot, you're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now we're going to work backwards, and we're going to be going into the equivalent picot of this side. We're just going to go on the side of it. So let me show you. We just did this chain 4, and you want to do a slip stitch into the back side of this picot, the very last one that you did. So insert your hook into that back of that picot and do a slip stitch there. Now from here, we're going to chain 4 to do a picot and go through that same spot. We're going to go through the back of the picot and do a slip stitch. That's going to be our first picot of this side here. Now we're going to move on to do 2 more picots. So chain 4. Find the next picot of the other side. So let me just show you. At the top, basically you have 3 picots. And now we're going to chain 4 and do a slip stitch to the first chain that you made. So what we have here is the right side of the snowflake and the very top. And now we're going to be working it downwards, doing the exact same size of picot, but on the other side. So we're going to be mirroring these picots. Some are 4, one is 14, 10, 8, and 4. So the way that you're going to start that is by doing a slip stitch to the back of the where you need to work it into. So do a slip stitch into the back of that first picot of the other side. And from there, we're going to do the chain 4 picot that we need. So 1, 2, 3, 4, slip stitch into the 4th chain from the hook. And now we're going to find the next picot, this one here, and into it, do a slip stitch. To be honest, go into a random point. I don't know if it's the back or the side of it, but as long as you're on the other side of that picot, from here we're going to do chain 4 and then a slip stitch to the first chain. Now we slip stitch to the back of the next picot, and from here do another chain 4 picot. Slip stitch into the first chain that you made. And let me show you, basically you've now just mirrored the chain 4 picots from the right on the left, and you have the top one, the peak of the snowflake. So let's move on. Now we're going to find the back side of the 14 picot, go into it with a slip stitch, and do another chain 14 picot. Okay, so that's 14. Now I'm going to do a slip stitch to the first chain that I made there. And now we find the back of the chain 10 picot and do a slip stitch there. From here, we're going to create another chain 10 picot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And do a slip stitch to the 10th chain from the hook, or the first one that you made. We're almost done here. The next one's our chain 8 picot. Do a slip stitch into it and chain 8. Slip stitch to the first chain that you made. And now we've got the very, or let's see here. Yeah, the very last picot. Insert your hook into it, and we're going to do a chain 4. Then slip stitch into the 4th chain from the hook. And now, let me see here. Now you just want to do a slip stitch on top of the half double crochet that you made. So the picot, I'll show you this after the snowflake, but you know how you're basically in row 2, you created the chain, the turning chain, the chain 2, and then a half double crochet. So on top of that half double crochet, insert your hook, you're kind of looking at it sideways here, and do a slip stitch. And now you've created that snowflake that comes off of that half double crochet that you just did a slip stitch into. So let me just show you what that looks like. You have got your chain 4 picot at the bottom, 8, 10, 14, 3 4s, and then the peak, which is also just a chain 4. But that is what that snowflake looks like. And let me see here, I believe now to continue the repeat after doing that slip stitch on top of the half double crochet, we're just going to do 1 half double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. So that is 1 and that is 2. And that is the end of the repeat. So this one's complex because you're working all those, long strands and then connecting them to like the middle, which creates this kind of like, I don't know, like if it were a leaf in the middle. And then you do those 2 half double crochets in between. And now I would go back and do the beginning of the repeat. Let me start it with you. The repeat begins by doing a half double crochet into the next stitch. So we do a half double crochet. And from here, we're going to start those picots. So first you're going to do a chain 4 picot, slip stitch to the first one. Then a chain 8 picot. So chain 8, slip stitch to the first one. Then a chain 10 picot. Slip stitch to the first one. Chain 14. Slip stitch to the first one. And now I'm going to do 3 picots. The picot would be the chain 4, slip stitch to the first one. I'm going to do that 3 times. I'll see you when I'm done. And now we're going to do the very peak of the snowflake, which is another picot. So chain 4. And do a slip stitch to the first chain that you made. And now we're going to work the back or the left side of the snowflake, working in the back of the picots of the other side. So do a slip stitch to the first chain 4 picot of that side. And now mirror the exact same picots. So I'm going to do 3 chain 4 picots, 1, 14, 10, 8, 4. And every time I'm making sure that I'm doing a slip stitch to the back of the next picot so that I can start it from the right side. So for example, this is a chain 4 picot, slip stitch to the first chain. And now since I'm going to do the picot of the next picot, like the mirroring one, I'm going to go into there with a slip stitch. And then I can work my picot. Slip stitch to the first chain. And slip stitch to the next picot. So now I'm just going to do this off camera here. I'm also almost done because I didn't do that like very many stitches for the foundation chain. So when I finish actually I'm going to do the picots up until chain 4 and I'll meet you there to finish the repeat together. Okay, here we go. I just did the last chain 4 picot, which is the very one at the bottom here. And so now I would just do a slip stitch to the top of the last half double crochet that I made. Go on top of that half double crochet and do a slip stitch. And to finish off the repeat, you would just go and do a half double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. So let's do that. That is 1 and 2. And so this is my second snowflake. They're going to kind of lie on top of one another because they're quite big. So it's going to give you that those kind of layers of snowflakes hanging off the bottom of the work. If you want them more spaced out, you could definitely do more half double crochets in between them. It's just a matter of figuring out the math to make sure that it matches, the amount of stitches that you have and how many snowflakes are going to go in between the edge. So I'm going to do one more of these because I have 1 repetition to go. Once you get to the end, you just cut off your yarn and thread your ends through. Okay, here we have it. I feel like this is hard to appreciate when you just grab it like this. It just looks kind of messy. But if you put it down and comb the edges of the snowflake, you can see them, a little bit more in detail. And again, because they're so close to one another, it creates these layers of them. But you could space them out so that you can kind of see them a little bit better if you want that look instead. Hey, while you're at it, why don't you just subscribe to my channel? Just do it. Just do it.